As you can see, the parking lot is packed because this is such a cool place. And outside we have all of these different people set up with all sorts of cool gems and finds. Look at that. Okay guys, so all of the rocks that we've just been looking at right here, this is the company, and they actually go to other shows. So if you are interested in anything that you saw or some more of the polished stones, definitely check them out. But now that we've checked out some of the vendors, it's time for us to go right in here. This is going to be epic. It is a mining museum, and they actually have guided tours and self-guided tours. So depending on what time of day, you might be interested in doing one or the other. I think we're gonna do a self-guided so we can kind of go along and see some different things. And I am so excited. Guys, this is so cool because I can hear the tour on a little iPod, and as I go through, it shows me all of the different displays, which are so detailed and so good. And this is definitely worth the $9, and I'm only at exhibit 2. This display right here, for example, is the blacksmith, and they're showing all of the different things that the blacksmith might have used. And then you have your actual blacksmith over here working. Now, in addition to the audio tour, they have some written text in here also. Look at how cool this looks though. This is all inside of the mine itself. This is so neat. Now, after you've completed each station, the recording pauses for a moment and then tells you to go on to the next one, and they're all numbered. So you have these big numbers to tell you where you need to be and what they're talking about, which is so neat. So right now I'm at 5, and this is just such an in-depth look at the mining industry. Really, really neat. This is kind of neat. It says that this little device right here, which is connected to a tank that's kind of over here in the dark, actually allowed the miners to no longer have to drill dusty holes because it pumped water up to help it settle all of that sediment as they were going. So that is pretty neat. That's the first time I've seen this. Now this little car right here actually held ore, and it could hold up to 1,000 pounds. And they called it an end dump because it would dump toward the end, but it could also be modified to dump toward the side. And then look at that. You can see how it would ride on this track into the shaft of the mine. So this guy right here is actually putting together the blasting pieces that would be used to do the mining itself. And as you can see, that's the big long fuse right there. And these would have been some of the ladders that they would have used also to get around in the mines. They had this little device over here which they were feeding through that fuse. That's kind of cool looking. And this miner, he looks so realistic. Now, I just learned something kind of different. They had different kinds of dynamite, and so based on how they packed it, they knew how much time that they would have. And then the fuse itself would go about 45 seconds per foot. So this allowed them to figure out their timing so they could be far away. I've been to some places before where they've had accidents, and I'm assuming that was because they didn't do their math correct. This drill right here, they said, was one of the most popular drills, and that the miners really liked it because it was fast, but it was also like almost a deafening, so you'd have to wear earplugs. It would go into these little spaces right here, and that's how that they would make their little blasting areas. Now, the tour just said that they had 5 holes that they would drill, and they would fill all of them except for the center one with the blasting items, so the dynamite. And the reason that they wouldn't do that with the center one was because it had to have somewhere to go with all that pressure. So the center one would form the direction for the blast. 9 also has something that just scared me a little bit. Yeah, when you get to 9, after you've listened, you'll understand. You will understand. Let's just say, yeah. Now this is called the slusher, and it said that the right lever went forward, the left lever came back towards you, and this is how they would use this with the ore cars. Now, with that said, they mentioned that Creede was the only mine to actually use this kind of drift track along with the slushers. So this is very unique to this site. So really cool to be able to see and then hear a little bit more about. Again, tour is definitely worth it. I'm just giving you some of the bullet points, but wow. This is called the air trimmer, and it could actually make a lot of trips. They said that a horse could bring about 6 to 10 different loads a day, but this could double that, and they could do multiple cars. So this was a very efficient way to get tons of ore cars up to the surface or to where they needed to be. Now this piece right here is actually called the most fun piece of underground equipment. It's called the mucker, and you can see this guy would be standing on the side of it, and he would work these little pieces up here which would control this bucket. And basically it would scoop it up and it would throw it over into the car, and it would just continue this process. And it made it a lot more efficient because the bucket was able to pick up a lot more than just a regular shovel like this back here. So that's kind of neat. I think this is a toilet. Oh yes it is. They called it the honey wagon, and it actually could be wheeled in and out. And yeah, that's kind of weird. But the more weird fact was this was right next to the lunchroom. So needless to say, this was very public and you didn't have any privacy. And it was only dumped once a week. So later in the week, you would not want to be eating over here while this was here. Ugh. And even more gross is the fact that the newbies were the ones who were in charge of dumping the honey wagon. I mean, everybody needs a job, but that is definitely a dirty job. Now this is the powder magazine, and behind these bars would be where they would store the dynamite. Only one guy would have the key to this so that others couldn't come and get it and use bad dynamite or use too much dynamite. So this was locked up. And let me just tell you, they got me again. 15. Man, they have a lot of jump scares for this not to be a scary place. This is an example of what a vein might have looked like. And this is a man-made vein, but they have the support stalls up here. You have a ladder for them to actually climb up, and they would place these so that they could expand the space. And the tour just said that these could be up to 100 or 200 feet. So this guy's job is a swamper. And again, this is another job that someone who is new might do. So what they do is there's a chute here, and then it would drop down all of the muck. And then the muck, of course, being the ore, he would then scrape it down into these little cars right here. So his job was not very dangerous, but it was very labor intensive because he would be going like this all day long. It's really cool to come in here and see not only what it might have looked like, but also what the jobs might have looked like, because they have these mannequins who are showing you what the position of the body might have been in constantly and what the actual physicality of it would have been. This is a very good museum, and I am getting so much information that I never had seen in other museums of similar nature, so super cool. Now this museum takes us through several years of mining here in Creede, and this is actually a different kind of drill that they would have used that at the very back there would have had a much larger drill bit, so to speak. It fit onto this track so they could move it continually through the mine itself. And then they have a different kind of car over here also, which is a little bit larger than the others that we have seen. But then look at this. This is actually, it's kind of hard to see, but this is a bike that would ride on the rails right there. And they said that this was one of the more difficult pieces to master because you could get up to 15 to 20 miles per hour on this rail right here. Now this guy right here is actually called the hoistman, and he would have this little contraption right here. And the only way that he would be able to communicate with others is through a series of bells. So he would basically be in solitude for his entirety of his shift and just in charge of making sure things came in and out of the mines correctly. Now this guy was basically in charge of like the elevator system is what we would think of it as. And he would know based on those bells that he would hear on if he was bringing down products, materials, or people. And so he would accordingly use the correct speed, pressure, and things like that in the descent. And then see here, they have the signals of the bells, how many bells, and what kind of levels that they would be. And on the other side of that, this is what the like elevator or hoist might have looked like. And they said that they have these in different sizes, the largest one being 9 people could fit into it. Okay, so we made it through the actual tour portion, and now we're in this last room. And this last room was actually created in conjunction with an entity of the government itself, so that's pretty neat. So some of the displays in here are actually interactive, and we can pick up things and listen to things just like we did with the tour. This has been such a neat experience. And again, I'm just giving you the Cliff's Notes because you definitely have to come and listen because it's that kind of good. It starts out with mining and life in America. In this display, it challenges us to look around and explore that everything has actually come from something. And I've touched on this a little bit while visiting some of the other museums that we've gone to, but quite literally everything in this photo right here has come from some kind of source that we can attribute to some kind of production. And if you ever had a traditional phone, all of these things right here may have been used in that traditional phone. After seeing that, we're encouraged to look at all the things that we use in our regular life and ask ourselves, could we survive without using the minerals? I don't think we could. There's so many things that have those different items. Like every modern thing that we have is definitely those. Now you might be asking yourself why the Forest Service has teamed up with a mining museum, because they seem like they're foreign entities. But in reality, a lot of the process of mining has been to take away from the land, and the Forest Service comes back in on those public spaces and replenishes it. So it's a hand-in-hand relationship. We cannot live without the mining, but we also need the recovery aspect. So let me show you a really cool picture that demonstrates that. Before, the land did not have a lot of redeeming qualities, so to speak. There weren't any trees, no grass. It wasn't very lush. And mind you, this is a picture that was taken during the winter months. You can tell by the snow. And then below you can see it is much more lush and beautiful and what we would more traditionally think of as forest land. Now the question though is, how can we do our part to make sure that we get that after instead of that before? And it's very simple. Companies like the mining industry are actually putting back money into the environment around them by investing in forest services and things like that. But also, as individuals, we can do things like recycling. That's such an easy thing that we can do, but it makes a huge difference because then we don't end up with all of these wasteful items just like everywhere. This sign right here kind of goes a little bit more into that though. It says that we need to find the balance, and Americans actually represent only 5%. See that? 5% of the world's population, but we consume 33% of the raw minerals and resources. Now, while we're standing in a mine, we probably don't want to hear this, but there are alternative energies that we can explore, and that would be helpful as well. But while we're using the ones that we have currently, we need to reduce, reuse, and recycle. The 3 R's that can make all the difference. So just kind of think about the things that you're using, that's all. I mean, not a big deal. Instead of picking up that thing that is plastic, maybe pick up one that you can refill instead. And then this last display right here is called Creede in an Exploded Moment. And this one has some telephones that we can actually listen to and some very interesting looking characters in this case. There's a little bit of a reflection there, but I think you can see them. So it says we lift the phone and we can hear a brief message. This is Emma McCrone, and she's actually right over here, kind of in the middle. And it's her actual voice.
It was 20 years of upriver history.
Isn't that cool?
Creede started. She always said that Creede,
Now the telephones play messages from each and every one of those people, which is kind of neat, but they're telling the backstory of Creede as a whole. Creede is a cool little town, and as I was driving through there, downtown is bustling. It's absolutely the quintessential mountain community that you would expect to see here in Colorado, but it actually began long before our little trip through town, obviously. It says right here that between 1889 and 1893, the town of Creede bustled with mining fever. By 1892, Creede's mines were producing $1 million worth of ore every single month. Now this started Creede to just booming with all sorts of interesting people, eclectic groups. It was kind of the place to be, but it was short-lived and the silver industry bottomed out. And whenever it did, a bust happened. Now, much like other places that we have seen along our adventures, that bust actually ended up taking a lot of the population away from the town and leaving it in a disrepair, kind of, so to speak. But the people who hung on to this community wanted to make sure that it continued to live on, and they did so by creating meaningful places for people to come still. And I think that that's awesome because it's very apparent when you're driving through Creede and seeing all of the amazingness. And then a place like this itself is absolutely awesome because, again, one of the best mining museums I have visited, period. So that was our last display. Let's walk back out to the gift shop. Okay, I did go ahead and pick up a magnet, so love those magnetic walls right there. Creede Underground Mining Museum. Okay, adventurers, that was an awesome stop here in Creede, Colorado. I had an absolute blast, and I hope that you did as well. Again, there's no way that I could cover all of the cool information that they had in there, but I gave you a little taste, and there's a couple other things that you might want to do here in the Creede area also, including a historic museum in downtown, and then, of course, there's all the Forest Service lands that you can get out and explore the amazing beauty that is Creede. I mean, look at this. We're just in this little bowl of amazingness. It is awesome. If you have enjoyed today's video, please make sure that you leave a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and check out all of my other content along this wonderful, amazing Colorado trip. Till next time, guys. Bye!